It's strange how a single phone call can pull you back to a place you thought you'd left behind for good. When I got the news that my childhood home in Brookfield was finally being cleared for inheritance, I didn't hesitate. Not because I needed the house. God knows I have no idea what I'd even do with it. But because, deep down, I think I needed to see the place again. For closure, maybe. Or just to prove to myself that the town wasn't as weird as I remembered. That I'd grown up, and all those creepy fragments from my childhood were nothing more than foggy nightmares warped by an overactive imagination. So I packed a bag, got in the car, and drove 4 hours back to Brookfield. It was just past 6 when I rolled in. The sun was setting behind the hills, casting everything in that warm orange gold glow that usually makes places feel safe. But here, it felt wrong. Familiar, but not quite. Like seeing an old friend after 10 years and realizing they've changed in ways you can't explain. The streets were quiet, but not in a peaceful way. More like people were deliberately staying inside. The few I did see, mostly older folks, a couple of kids on bikes, stared a little too long. Their smiles came a beat too late. I swear, one woman crossed the street just to avoid passing me. I chalked it up to small-town awkwardness. I hadn't been back since I was a teenager. Maybe I just looked like an outsider now. That's what I told myself anyway. Then came the first weird moment. I stopped at the general store to grab a few essentials. The old bell above the door still rang when I stepped in, and the same dusty shelves lined the walls. The clerk, grey-haired, tired eyes, didn't greet me, just watched as I picked out a bottle of water and some snacks. At the register, as he rang up my things, he finally spoke. "You staying long?" "Just a few days," I said, taking care of my family's place. He gave a slow nod, then added, dead serious, "Don't go out past midnight." I laughed, thinking it was a joke. That's some kind of town curfew. He didn't laugh, didn't even blink, just handed me my change and said, "You'll sleep better if you listen." That was the first time I felt it, that quiet pressure in the air, like the town itself was holding its breath. Later, as I walked toward the house, I passed a few more people. An old man on a porch muttered, "You're back," without even looking at me. I tried to brush it off, but by the time I reached the front steps of the house, I was uneasy. The house was just as I remembered. 2 stories, chipped paint, dead flower beds, but the air around it felt heavier, like it had soaked up years of something. Memories, maybe, or secrets. The porch creaked under my feet. The key still worked. Inside, everything was still. Dust covered everything, but it didn't feel abandoned. It felt like it had been, waiting. I dropped my bag by the stairs and stood there, trying to remember where everything was. The living room where I used to build pillow forts. The kitchen where my mom always made breakfast, even when things were tense. The hall closet I used to hide in when the rules got too strict. Yeah, the rules. I hadn't thought about those in years. As a kid, I thought every family had weird house rules. Stuff like no mirrors after midnight, or don't look outside if you hear whispers. Just part of growing up. I assumed my parents were just strict or paranoid. But now, with the way the townspeople acted, and that cold silence pressing in from every corner of the house, I wasn't so sure anymore. I told myself I was only back for a few days, but something in me already knew. Brookfield wasn't going to let me leave without reminding me why I left in the first place. That first night, I couldn't sleep. I blamed it on the dust in the air, the unfamiliar silence of a house left untouched for years, the way the floorboards creaked like they were whispering under my weight. But if I'm being honest, it was something else. A pressure, a weight in my chest that didn't have a name. Around 10:30, I threw on a jacket and decided to take a walk. Clear my head. Maybe see if the diner was still open and grab a coffee. Or at least convince myself that Brookfield still had some semblance of normal life after dark. But the town looked different at night. Not just darker, quieter, empty. Even the houses looked closed off, like they were trying to pull away from the streets. No music, no dogs barking, no porch lights. Just the occasional flicker of a dying street lamp and the soft crunch of gravel under my shoes. I was halfway to the town square when I saw him. He stood under one of the flickering lamps, right at the edge of the sidewalk, like he'd been waiting. Still, too still, not smoking, not scrolling a phone. Just standing, hands at his sides, staring straight ahead, at me. At first, I figured he was just another night owl, some local who liked making newcomers uncomfortable. But as I got closer, I noticed something was wrong. His clothes were too clean, too pressed, like they didn't belong in this dusty little town. And he didn't look confused, curious, or surprised to see me. He looked expectant. I slowed as I approached. He stepped forward, smooth, deliberate, like he didn't waste movement. I stopped a few feet away. So did he. Suddenly the space between us felt too small. Then he spoke. "You should have left when you had the chance, Liam." That stopped me cold. My name. He said my name. I didn't recognize him. Not from my childhood. Not from the store. Not from anywhere. Before I could ask who he was or how he knew me, he said, "Follow the rules, or you'll see what happens when you don't." His voice was low, not quite a whisper, not loud either. There was no threat in it, no emotion, just certainty, like he was stating a fact. I opened my mouth to respond. Ask something, anything, but nothing came out. My mind was still scrambling. How did he know I was back? How did he know my name? And more importantly, what rules? He didn't wait for a response, just gave me one last look, then turned and walked into the narrow gap between two buildings. Gone. No car, no door, just swallowed by the night. I stood there for a long time, heart pounding harder than I wanted to admit. Eventually, I made it back to the house, locked the doors, double-checked the windows, sat in the living room with every light on, telling myself it was just a strange encounter, just a local trying to scare the outsider, nothing more. But I couldn't shake the way he said it. Follow the rules. The sun was already creeping through the dusty curtains when I woke up. I dragged myself into the kitchen, made some coffee that tasted like cardboard and rust, and told myself I was just jet-lagged, just tired, maybe still spooked from being back in a town that held more ghosts than memories. The strange man was probably just trying to mess with me. Probably. I figured I'd make use of the morning and try to start clearing out some of the junk in the house. The place hadn't been touched in years, and the attic was a black hole of old furniture, forgotten boxes, and whatever my mom and dad were too sentimental to throw out. It was hotter than hell up there, dusty too. I had to move an old rocking chair, a broken lamp, and a stack of board games that probably hadn't been played since the early 2000s just to get to the far end of the room. That's when I saw it. A wooden box, plain, unlabeled, and tucked behind a stack of photo albums. I don't know why I opened it. Maybe curiosity, maybe that weird gut instinct that something was calling me to it. Inside was a diary, Not just any diary. My diary. I recognized the handwriting immediately. Blocky, a little messy, childish. My name was written inside the front cover, the way a kid might write it if they were proud to own something. Liam Foster. Underlined twice in blue crayon. But here's the thing. I don't remember ever keeping a diary. Not one like this. I sat down, the box still at my feet, and flipped through the first few pages. The entries were short, clipped, almost more like notes than actual journal entries. And they weren't about school or friends or cartoons or any of the things you'd expect from a 9-year-old. They were rules written like warnings. Never answer knocks after midnight. If you feel watched, do not turn around. The mirror is not your friend after dark. Keep the curtains closed after sundown, no matter what you hear. Never speak to the man in the brown coat. Each one was written over and over like I was trying to memorize them. Some pages were torn out. Others were covered in thick, panicked scribbles. One page simply said, "He watches me sleep." I told Mom. She told me not to answer the door anymore. I felt sick. I remembered my parents being strict, really strict, especially at night. I wasn't allowed to stay up past 9 p.m., even on weekends. I wasn't allowed to sleep near windows. They'd freak out if I left my curtain open even an inch. I thought they were just overprotective. Now I wasn't so sure. Reading that diary, I got the feeling those rules weren't about discipline. They were protection. And not from burglars or weirdos. But as I sat there reading more and more of my own handwriting, writing I had no memory of ever putting down, it hit me. There were gaps, not just foggy memories, but entire stretches of my childhood that felt like static. I always assumed that was just how memory worked. I spent the rest of the morning flipping through that diary, page by page, not even realizing how much time had passed. It was like I was reading someone else's memories, someone who looked like me, wrote like me, but had lived through something I had somehow completely forgotten. By the time I finally closed it, the sun had shifted to that late afternoon haze, casting long, sleepy shadows across the floor. I went downstairs, trying to clear my head, but everything felt off. The air was still and heavy, like the house was holding its breath. I needed to get out, get some air, maybe grab something to eat and convince myself I was overthinking it all. The town might have felt a little strange, but it was still just a town, right? Except it wasn't. I walked to the corner store, the same one I used to buy ice cream from when I was a kid, and it was open, but something was wrong. The lights inside were on. The cashier was standing behind the counter, but the atmosphere felt stiff, unnatural, like everyone inside was playing a part and didn't want to mess up their lines. The guy behind the register smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Back for good?" he asked, sliding a bottled water across the counter. I nodded. "Just visiting, cleaning out my parents' place." He paused. "Then you should remember the rules. You haven't forgotten them, right?" He didn't blink as he said it. I told him I remembered, paid, and left without another word. As I walked back through town, I noticed more of it. People were outside, sure, watering plants, sweeping porches, waving politely. But they all had this tension, like actors waiting for the curtain to fall. Every glance lingered too long. Every smile felt glued on. Everyone seemed like they were watching something, or waiting for it. I decided to take the long way back, down one of the older streets that ran parallel to the woods. That's when I saw him again. The man from last night. Same tattered coat, same gaunt face, same eyes like scorched glass. He was standing perfectly still on the corner, facing me, not moving, not speaking, just staring. I froze. "What do you want?" He took a single step forward, boots crunching against the gravel. "I told you not to test the rules, Liam." His voice was low, almost apologetic, like he was warning me more than threatening me. "Some things," he said, "are better left unknown." And then he turned and walked away. No drama, no vanish in a flash theatrics. Just walked off like someone clocking out of a shift they were sick of working. But something in me shifted after that. Something clicked. The diary, the rules, the way the town seemed to hold its breath every time the sun dipped low. It wasn't just nerves. Something was off, and everyone seemed to know it, but me. Still, I wasn't convinced. The rules felt like something a kid would scribble during a storm, not some survival guide. You know that feeling when you start doing something just in case? Like knocking on wood, or holding your breath past a cemetery. That was me. That morning, I looked at the diary again. Same scribbled handwriting I still couldn't remember writing. The rules felt like something a scared kid would jot down during a thunderstorm. Still, I made coffee and caught myself flipping the light switch 3 times. Why? I don't know. Maybe the town was getting to me. The weird part was the rules, these don't go out past dark type rules, weren't even hard to follow. Not really. I wasn't going to take a stroll through the woods after dusk anyway, and it wasn't like I had much to do here at night. But somehow, the more I read them, the more they clung to my thoughts like cobwebs. I remember telling myself, it's just small town weirdness, superstition, like salt over the shoulder. But that didn't explain why I double-checked the locks before sundown. Didn't explain why I unplugged the TV. Didn't explain why I left the hallway mirror covered with an old sheet from the closet. I told myself it was just habit, or maybe I was being dramatic, feeding into the atmosphere. But deep down, I think I was already afraid, not of what might happen, but of what wouldn't happen if I broke the rules. Like testing them might break something else. By 9 p.m., I sat in the living room with all the lights off, the curtain drawn tight. I played music low on my phone, not too loud, and kept checking the time. The town outside was silent again. No passing cars, no porch lights. The kind of quiet you only hear in old cemeteries or long abandoned churches. Then the whispers started. At first it sounded like wind, easy enough to dismiss. This house creaked like it was constantly trying to remember it was still standing. But then, I heard my name. Liam. Software gentle, like someone was calling from the end of a long hallway. Liam. I froze. No one was at the door, no shadow through the curtain. But my heart started racing. Just the house settling, I told myself. I grabbed my phone, checked the time, 11:56 p.m. I waited. 4 minutes. Knock, knock, knock. It was so soft I almost convinced myself I imagined it. Knock, knock, knock. 3 again. Steady, calm. My body went ice cold. I stood there, a few feet from the door, paralyzed. My fingers hovered near the knob, not because I wanted to open it, but because I had to know. But another rule flashed in my head. Never answer knocks after midnight. It was probably a joke. Someone from town messing with me. A neighbor being clever. Or maybe my mind playing tricks. Still, I backed away. I didn't say a word. Didn't make a sound. And after what felt like an eternity, The knocking stopped. I stayed in the corner of the room, away from the mirror, the windows, everything. Back pressed against the wall, knees up to my chest, gripping that diary like it could hold the house together. By the time morning came, I felt hollow, like the night had taken something from me I couldn't name. I stayed quiet, careful, moved through the house like the walls were listening. By the fourth day, I'd stopped pretending this was normal. The town felt tighter somehow, like the streets had narrowed, like the shadows stretched longer than they should have. I kept my head down, didn't talk to anyone, didn't linger. Just moved like someone trying not to be noticed. Around noon, I cut through the alley behind the old hardware store, shortcut back home. That's when I saw him again. He wasn't waiting this time. He stepped out from behind the dumpster like he knew I'd be there, like we were on some kind of schedule. "The last rule," he said, not even bothering with a greeting. "You must not leave the house after midnight." His voice was different, less calm, more urgent. A pressure behind every word, like he was barely holding something back. I didn't say anything. I just nodded, trying to look like I understood. He took a step closer. "No matter what you see, no matter what you hear, you stay inside. Do you understand?" I opened my mouth to ask him why, but he turned and walked away. Not vanished, just walked. Down the alley, around the corner. Like that was all he came to say. By the fourth day, I'd stopped pretending this was normal. The town felt tighter somehow, like the streets had narrowed. That night, I did everything like I was supposed to. The clock was ticking down to midnight, and I made sure every light was off, every window shut tight. The house felt suffocating in its silence, the kind of quiet that presses on your chest, makes your own breathing sound too loud. I kept thinking about what the old man had said. "You must not leave the house after midnight." It was hard to convince myself to keep going, but I did. The house was locked, the curtains drawn, just like the rule said. But something felt different tonight. My heart was thudding, and my thoughts kept racing, like I was being pulled towards something I didn't want to face. Then, just like before, the town outside became still. No cars, no sounds, just the oppressive quiet. The clock struck 12 a.m. I told myself I wouldn't break the rules. Not this time. I'd already done enough just by being here. But as the seconds ticked by, I couldn't ignore the feeling creeping up my spine. That same unease that had built up since I first arrived in Brookfield. That feeling that something was waiting for me, watching. Then I heard it. A knock. Knock, knock, knock. Soft at first, almost like a whisper, but it grew louder, more insistent. 3 knocks, steady, patient, like it had been waiting for me to hear it. My hand went to the door before I even realized it. The rules flashed in my mind. The first rule, the one that had kept me in line all these days. Never answer knocks after midnight. But the pull was too strong. Something in me needed to know what was on the other side of that door. I hesitated. I told myself I wouldn't. But my hand didn't stop. I turned the knob. Nothing. I stood there for a long moment, staring into the dark street. The same thick blackness that had been there all day. No movement, no shadows, just the eerie stillness. I closed the door quickly, locking it again. But the knock came again, exactly the same. 3 knocks, calm, deliberate. And for a split second I thought, what if I'm wrong? What if this time someone's really out there? But then I froze. A cold shiver ran down my spine, and I knew I shouldn't have opened the door. I didn't open it again. But the damage was done. I'd broken the rule. As soon as I shut the door, the silence felt heavier than before. Not just quiet, hollow, like the town had exhaled its last breath and was waiting for something to fill the void. The air in the house shifted. I couldn't tell if it was colder or if the cold was just inside me now. The lights buzzed faintly, even though they were off. And for a moment, I thought I saw something move, just at the edge of my vision. A flicker, a darker shade of dark. I didn't follow it. I didn't even turn my head. I just stood there, still clutching the doorknob, like I could hold the line by sheer will alone. Eventually, I let go. The house was too quiet. Not peaceful, not comforting. The kind of quiet that hums in your skull. The kind that makes your ears ring just to remind you you're still alive. I should have stayed awake, should have stayed alert. But the weight of the stillness made everything feel heavier. My limbs, my thoughts, my fear. It all faded into that silence. I lay down, and the silence welcomed me like a warm, damp blanket. Heavy, smothering, but comforting in a way that didn't feel right. Then I drifted off to sleep. The rules. I woke up with a splitting headache. No sound, no light, just a pressure, like something leaning over me, watching. I opened my eyes to darkness, not the dim grey blue of early morning. This was thick, pitch black, a kind of dark that didn't belong here, not at this hour, not at all. I reached over to flick the lamp. Nothing. The power was out, or worse. Maybe the house was gone, and I was just floating in some kind of void. Some part of me, some primal, buried instinct, was screaming that something had changed. I grabbed my phone off the nightstand and turned on the flashlight. The beam cut a narrow path through the dark, but it didn't help much. The light felt swallowed, like the walls and air around me drank it in faster than it could shine. I checked the time. 9:03 a.m. That should have comforted me. Morning. It was supposed to be daylight, but everything outside my window was still night, worse than night. The black outside wasn't just the absence of the sun. It was something else. This wasn't just a lingering night. This was something else. And I had the sinking feeling. It started when I opened that door. That couldn't be right. Not just cloudy or overcast. Black, like the sky had been scraped clean. A thick mist clung to the street outside, swirling low around the pavement, hiding the ground like it was trying to erase the town. Everything looked wrong, warped almost. I opened the door and stepped outside. The cold hit immediately, not sharp or biting, just empty, hollow, like the air had been drained of life. No birds, no wind, no sun. Just darkness and that swirling fog, curling around the houses like fingers dragging through dust. I took a step forward, then another. My own footsteps echoed too loud, like the world had gotten too big around me, or too empty. Brookfield was gone quiet. Or maybe this wasn't Brookfield anymore, and I was alone in whatever was left of it. I moved down the street, phone light bobbing in front of me like a candle in a tunnel. Every house I passed was shuttered. No lights, no sound. Like the whole town had been abandoned overnight. But it hadn't. I could feel it. That pressure again. The one from my room. Like eyes digging into the back of my neck. Like something was watching me from just beyond the reach of the light. I spun around more than once, certain I'd catch someone standing there. But there was nothing. Just mist. Just dark. I kept going. The grocery store on Main was locked. The diner had its stools flipped and lights off. No people, no voices, just me, my breath, and that damn creeping sense of being seen. Then I saw it, something move, just a flicker far down the road. Too fast to be human, too smooth. I froze. The air shifted. The fog curled tighter. My light flickered. And I realized this place wasn't empty. I froze. That flicker at the edge of the mist. It had shape, not quite human, not quite anything. My breath hitched. I wasn't alone out here. Then came the feeling. Heavy, intense, like a spotlight without a beam. Something was watching me. My instinct screamed. I started to turn, just a glance, just to make sure. Then I remembered. The rules. If you feel watched, do not turn around. Too late. My head had already shifted halfway. I stopped myself, neck stiff, forcing my gaze forward. My phone light quivered in my hand, and so did I. The street was silent, but the feeling didn't leave. If anything, it got stronger. Something behind me moved. I didn't see it. I didn't have to. I just knew. My legs finally obeyed. I walked faster, then faster still. Don't run. Don't run. Running draws attention. I kept going, eyes locked ahead, breath shallow, every step louder than it should have been. The watching didn't stop. The streets weren't the same. The fog pressed closer. The houses stood like silent watchers, windows blacked out, doors shut like mouths unwilling to speak. Not a single sign of life, just my footsteps. I rushed back to the house, my mind racing with the need to escape. The oppressive silence of Brookfield seemed to follow me, pulling me in tighter with every step I took. When I reached the front door, I didn't waste any time, just locked it behind me, double-checking that the deadbolt was secure. I took a deep breath, trying to calm the frantic beat of my heart. But it wasn't helping. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched, that something was just waiting for me to make a mistake. I hurried inside, switching on a light and looking around for my car keys. I had to get out of here. I had to leave before whatever this town had in store for me reached its breaking point. I spotted them on the kitchen counter, right where I'd left them earlier. My heart fluttered with relief. I grabbed them, and as I turned toward the door, my eyes caught something in the hallway. The mirror, the one near the front door. I'd never paid much attention to it before, but tonight it stood out like a dark warning. I felt a pull, almost as if it was calling to me, and for a moment I almost went toward it. But then a sudden chilling thought stopped me cold. The rule: if you feel watched, do not turn around. It's a trap, the mirror. Do not look at the mirror after midnight. My breath caught in my throat. I remembered what the strange man had said on the first day. The warning was clear. And now I understood. I knew in that instant that whatever was on the other side wasn't just a reflection. It was something more, something waiting for me to break that one rule, waiting for me to look. I turned away from the mirror quickly, heart hammering. I didn't dare look back. The rules were there for a reason, and breaking them was a mistake I couldn't afford to make again. I grabbed the door handle, stepped outside, and for the first time since I'd arrived in Brookfield, I didn't care about the rules anymore. The town was too dangerous, too full of things that shouldn't be real. I just wanted to leave, and I wasn't going to let anything stop me. I drove away from Brookfield, my hands gripping the wheel, desperate to leave it all behind, desperate to escape the nightmare that had haunted me for days. The hum of the engine was a brief comfort, the cold air rushing through the cracks of my window as I sped down the empty roads. But somewhere along the way, my eyelids grew heavy and my thoughts started to blur together. Before I knew it, I drifted off. When I opened my eyes again, I wasn't in my car. I wasn't anywhere I recognized. The dim light of a motel room flickered overhead. The air smelled thick, musty, like stale carpet and dust. I sat up, disoriented, a fog pressing in on my mind. The soft glow of a lamp cast strange shadows on the walls, and the faint hum of the fluorescent light above made the silence feel suffocating. I reached for my phone, still clenched in my hand from before, blinking at the screen in a daze. The time read 9 a.m., but the blackness outside the window didn't make sense. It felt wrong. Midnight still had its grip on me, like the night was refusing to let go. I rubbed my eyes, trying to clear the confusion. What the hell happened? How did I get here? Then, like a punch to the gut, I remembered. The last rule. You must not leave the house after midnight. I had broken the rule. I left. I thought I could outrun whatever it was that waited for me in Brookfield. But now it felt like I'd only stepped deeper into whatever this nightmare had become. The air in the room felt heavy, like something was pressing in on me. My heart pounded, the beat quickening as panic crept up my spine. The lights flickered again, once, twice, then went out completely. The darkness in the room wasn't just the absence of light. It felt suffocating, like it was swallowing everything around me. I gripped the diary in my hands, the only thing that seemed real in this strange place. Maybe if I wrote it all down, I could make sense of it, figure out why I was here, why it wasn't over. Then the light flickered back to life, weak and dim. For a second, everything was still, until I saw my reflection in the window. I was pale, haunted. My own face didn't look like mine anymore. I hadn't escaped. This wasn't a break. I hadn't found a way out. I grabbed the pen, my hand shaking, and began to write in the diary, trying to make sense of everything that had happened. But just as the words started to form, I heard it. A knock. Knock, knock, knock. Software steady, deliberate. My blood ran cold. My hand froze over the page. I knew that sound. It wasn't just the knock of someone at the door. It was something else, something worse, a warning. I didn't move. I couldn't. I wanted to ignore it. I wanted to pretend I hadn't heard it. But the knock came again, louder this time, pressing against the walls of my mind. I didn't want to look. I didn't want to turn around. I'm writing this as the knocks are getting louder. I can't say I've found any way out. But I'm hoping someone will find this book and not make the same mistakes as I did. Follow the rules. Don't break them. You will not get another chance.